What is up, everyone? Barricade here, and bringing you guys some interesting Gears of War news. The other day, I decided to tweet Rod Ferguson himself and ask him about some details about the Gears of War Ultimate Edition campaign. And I asked him, well, before I even say anything, I'll post a tweet right here so you guys can check it out, so you can see it on screen. Basically, I asked him I heard that, the Gears of War Ultimate Edition campaign is actually 30 frames per second instead of 60 frames per second. Is this true? And he replied with, yes, multiplayer is 60 frames per second and single player is 30 frames per second due to us wanting to push the visual bar high. So I was kind of like, I was kind of disappointed by this because I never heard about this. I constantly heard about how Gears of War Ultimate Edition is actually, 1080p, it's 60 frames per second. That's what everyone kept saying. So I was kind of like believing that that's what the whole game was like, that the whole entire game was 60 frames per second. But it turns out that actually it's just the multiplayer, which overall in the end, it kind of bothers me overall, being 100% honest. I wanted the full entire game to be 60 frames per second because it just looks so smooth. It's so awesome to see the game itself run at this frame rate, and it just looks so amazing to see, and to knowing that, one of the major parts of the game, the campaign, the single player, is only 30 frames per second, the original frame rate that we had back on the 360, kind of makes me like a little bit like, damn, it kind of makes me wish that it was, 60 frames per second. But I kind of understand what he means by, them having to push the visual bar high. It makes sense that they're trying to upgrade the graphics as, high as possible. But to be 100% honest with you guys, I kind of wish that there was like an option or something. Because, like if you see like on certain other games, there's been games in the past that I've even played that let you choose between frame rate. Like it'll tell you, you can choose between 30 frames per second or 60 frames per second. And even if there was like a setting to where like you can choose 60 frames per second, but you got to put it like at a lower resolution or something, like you got to play like at 900p to play in 60 frames per second. Honestly, I would pick that. Like if I could honestly choose between 1080p, 30 frames per second, or 900p at 60 frames per second, I would totally pick the one with 60 frames per second, because in my personal opinion, I think frame rate is more important than resolution. That's just my personal opinion. So I was kind of like, overall, I'm kind of disappointed about this, but in the end, the only good thing about this is it's just the campaign. This is just the single player mode. But when you jump in multiplayer, you still get that beautiful, buttery smooth 60 frames per second. And, even the crazy thing that he even said in the Comic-Con thing that I watched, he did like a presentation with other people from the coalition talking about the game. The one thing that's really cool and gotta admit kind of even tempted me a little bit is that if you play it on the PC, if you play it on the PC version, not the Xbox version, but if you play the PC version, there is no locked frame rate, meaning that no matter how, depending on how powerful your PC is, your setup is, you can pretty much just make that game run at pretty much any frame rate your computer possibly can handle. So you can have your game running at like 100 frames per second or something, whatever the height is for your PC. Basically, there's no limit as long as your PC is strong enough to play that game at that frame rate. Like when I heard that, I was just like, damn, just imagine playing Gears of War Ultimate Edition at like twice the 60 frames, like 120 frames per second or something, and playing it at 4K resolution on a giant TV, giant screen. That would just be mind-boggling. My head would just explode. That would just be so crazy to see. But anyways, guys, I just wanted to bring you guys this little quick update. If you guys like this video, please definitely hit that like button, subscribe, and tell me what you guys think about this whole frame rate limitation. Overall, I'm kind of disappointed about it. I kind of wanted the whole game to be running at 60 frames per second. But in the end, it is just the campaign. You only play that a few times, get achievements and everything, and then once you're done with that, boom, you're on multiplayer like 99% of the time after that. So overall, in the end, as long as it's just a multiplayer that gets 60 frames per second, I can deal with that, because in the end, that's the one that's going to matter the most. Because after I beat the campaign a few times, I'm going to be on multiplayer for like ever, until Gears of War 4 comes out, honestly. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching, and take it easy.